It's been a heavy few months, years, weeks, I don't know. Claim your amount of time. A while. We've been carrying a lot of really heavy stuff for the past at least few years. Probably not, our life, right? Life is heavy. We've had COVID, we've had protests. There's been the overturning of Roe versus Wade. Not to mention, we've all had to face personal battles, right, through the last few years. And as a church and as Christians who seek to truly understand Christ's message, we seek to live out and reach to the marginalized, which also has its, ups and downs and heaviness. And I know that's a lot we've been talking about over the last few weeks. And that can really leave a lot of burden, a lot of our soul kind of feeling torn apart at the end of the day. It's exhausting work. It's what Christ has asked it to do is exhausting, soul-wrenching work. So, I don't know about you, but I'm exhausted from fighting the good fight. I am. I'm parenting a teenager, 12-year-old. We are definitely getting into solidly, at least the teenage forget things. I had literally had to tell her, honey, can you pick up the backpack that's on the bottom of the stairs? What backpack? The one that you literally have to step over, like leap over to get onto the steps? Oh, that one. Yes, that one. Can we not pick that up? And there's probably been 5 reminders prior to that. She's like, okay, I'll get it. Right? So there's just the daily, just existing can be heavy. And then just holding a job and wanting to be good at your job, right? And doing all of that. And I can't tell you how many of the times, especially this week, because as I said, the sermon has been brewing in me for a while, but especially this week, I can't tell you how many times where I've said, I'm done. I am done, D-O-N-E, stick a fork in me, I am just done. And I know I'm not alone. This is important and hard work that we do. So it is also equally important that we find time to touch into God's Spirit. That we find some time to rest and reap the rewards of just standing in the Spirit. And standing in a place of wonderment and finding a way to tap into the ever-flowing river of energy that is God's love. So today my goal is not to give you a deep insight, right? Which I try to do sometimes, right? But it's to remind you of simple truths. So it's my hope that in reminding you of simple truths, things that we've probably talked about before, things that we know already, but that it may find a way to give you something to rejuvenate your spirit as we go into the next battle. So I'm going to take a hard left. It's going to feel like a hard left. And as I was sitting here contemplating, I'm like, I don't know how many fundamentalist Christians I'm going to piss off in this sermon, but just fair warning, if that's a fair trigger warning, I guess. And I'm going to talk about Harry Potter. All right. Do I have any Harry Potter fans in the audience? Yeah. Yes, I love Harry Potter. And I didn't grow up on Harry Potter. I was introduced to Harry Potter when I was a graduate student, when I was working on my PhD in chemical engineering. Did not finish it, but I was.
Harry Potter or the PhD?
I finished Harry Potter multiple times over. The PhD did not get finished. But what I remember reading Harry Potter, and sorry, I didn't realize how hot I get. And I was mesmerized by the magical world, right? This world that's kind of slightly to the left of our world and intertwined with quote unquote the real world. And just intrigued by this idea that there's this world parallel to ours, operating in secret. And I think this is probably a theme in my reading. If you've ever read Neil Gaiman's work, he has a book called Neverwhere. It's kind of similar, but a little bit more darky, a little bit more adult. And Isabella Allende, if you've ever read her work, and especially she's sort of like the master of magical realism. How does within our reality we tap into something extra? So I feel like I'm drawing upon those people today, and those people walk with me as I walk, as I imagine into this world. So in Harry Potter Book 5, Prisoner of Azkaban, we first kind of get introduced to this idea of wizarding houses being in secret spaces, right? So Harry Potter goes to his godfather's house and has to read a letter, and between two houses, out pops, like there's like number 10, and there's anyways, just skipping the numbers. Like it goes 10, 11, 13, right, or something, and then, and I can't remember the number, but, and after he reads it, the houses move, and out pops this mansion, right, where the Wizarding World is. And it was, I don't know what it was about this that intrigued my imagination so much, but ever since then, I've been looking for wizard houses. I go out on walks, I'm looking for where the wizard house could be. Maybe there's a gap in the numbers, and most often it's where there should be something, but there's nothing, right? So, like, for example, I was having a really tough time. I was trying to think of what city was that. Like, I remember calling my boss and, like, not going off on her, but, like, just pontificating, and there was probably some F words in there. She was listening to me purge, and so I remember that, but I don't remember what city I was in. And I was in an industrial park, and as I'm doing the walk, there's just this fenced-in area, nothing there, right? So like it's like factory, warehouse, and then nothing. And when I was in Austin, Texas, just recently, there's this little spot in the downtown area. I was walking with a friend of mine. We were there for South by Southwest EDU, and building, tall tower building, nice little houses that have been converted into like music places or bars or what have you. Then there's just this piece of grass surrounded by a picket fence. And I told my friend, I was like, that's a Harry Potter house. She's like, luckily she knows me well enough. She's a colleague. She knows me well enough to be like, okay, what is Leslie saying now? But I find myself as I walk of stepping into the space of the imaginal, of the not quite right there, and I find some respite or some rest in that. I find some rejuvenation in that. Even here, if you go down 3rd Street, between houses and Governor's Green, it's just this sort of semicircular space. There's nothing there, right? And the first time I saw it, there was a stag right in the middle of the land. And I mean, that just got my imagination, right? Like, oh my God, it's God coming to talk to me. It's his space. And so I do feel like, even in the everyday, whether you call it Harry Potter wizard houses, or you call it sacred land, or you call it what you do, I do feel like God hides these spaces for us to just stop and question and wonder, what is this doing here, right? And step into this imaginal realm. When I got the idea for this sermon, again, I was out walking. I'm sure it was, I'm trying to walk just for health, but sometimes I'll do an extra long walk. So I live over on Copperstone Village, and then sometimes I will leave the village and I walk over to Governor's Green, and I'll walk around, especially if I want to do like a whole hour, and I force myself to do that. And so I've walked Governor's Green a lot and never noticed this one wooded area, or maybe never thought that I should go down it. And I was in one of these Harry Potter wizard spouting moods, and one day it just stopped and it called to me. There was like a gap in the trees, and there was like this path, and then you'd go down the path and it's like a circle of trees. I felt like a druid priestess walking into another world in the middle of a neighborhood. And so I stopped. I said, part of me was not going to do it, and then I said, no, you're gonna take this moment and you're gonna step into this space. And I stood there, and I pulled out my earbuds, because we tune out our natural world now, because we're always having our earbuds, always having to feel like something else is going on in my head, learn that thing, do that thing. And so I took out my earbuds and allowed myself to be immersed in the silence. And it was so odd. I know I'm in the middle of the neighborhood, but the sounds of the children faded, and the sounds of the cars faded. And for a moment, I was in a sacred space. I was, I don't know, like Moses, with a burning bush, and asked to take off his sandals. Don't remember if I did that or not. I may have, because who knows, I can get crazy like that. Or pull out your earbuds, Leslie. There's something to be said here. And the sounds of nature washed over me. The trees and their language of wisps and rustles and tussles and shakes. And I stood on the ground. I put my feet into the earth, and I connected my spirit to the sky. As I mentally asked my worries and fears to sink into the ground and be absorbed and dissipated, I asked for God's energy and spirit to strengthen me. And for just that moment, I was transfixed. I wasn't an engineer. I wasn't a scientist. I didn't need to understand or know why was this space created when, so many other places are being decimated, right, and taken up by houses or businesses. It was there. It was still there for me to step into that day when I really needed it. And as I left that space, I started to think about other ways we have used nature and other places to connect to the divine. I was thinking about just now as I came in, I had the opportunity once to take a pilgrimage with my campus ministry to Edinburgh. And I remember going into there's a St. Cuthbert's Cathedral. So if you ever go to Edinburgh, you have to go to St. Cuthbert's Cathedral. And it's right off the busiest street in Edinburgh, Princess Street. And you enter the street and you literally walk into a graveyard that has been there for centuries, probably a millennia, because I think the church was originally built in 500 AD, right? So we're talking thousands of years, and gravestones that have been there for, again, centuries, old oaks. And I remember it being so weird that you walk just 2 steps into this and the noise of the street disappears. You literally walk back in time into another world. And I remember going to Iona, Scotland, and I've talked about this before. There is still an abbey there, and you could stay at the abbey for a week. And we actually stayed in bed and breakfasts, and then you can go around. The island is tiny, so you could walk the whole island. And actually, there is a day where you can get on a tour and walk the whole island. And one part of the island is the old nunnery. And they have turned it more into a garden, but it's where, and if you look at it, at some point, the abbey there was founded, by, I can't remember his name right now, St. Columba, and he wanted to escape some travesty that happened in Ireland, so he kept island hopping until he could no longer see Ireland. So it's way out in the middle of the sea. And so they founded this place. You have monks over time. You have monks, you have nuns. Well, at some point, the monks left. Sorry, men. Y'all left. The nuns there because they were Viking raiders. So they were like, well, the nuns were like, we're just going to stay, I guess. Or they're like, y'all stay here. We're going because of too many Viking raids. And so it did talk about how the nunnery basically died out at some point. And so you have just like these 3 gravestones, like things in the earth. And I, imagine these are the last women from this place. And you walk into this sort of like these ruins and this garden, and you do enter into another time and space. You're transported for just a moment. And I've been reading a lot lately about Christian mysticism and the Gnostic Gospels and the imaginal realm. I have no idea if what I'm about to say is true. I literally have just started reading, so this is like me entering into some questioning. But I think about that. I think about that something has been lost when we have tried in our scientific process, and this is me talking as a scientist who believes in the scientific method, right? So I'm not saying let's dish all reason, don't throw out all reason, but sometimes we have lost that, that thing that allows us to wonder and to be apart from this world for just a moment and to connect into something other than ourselves. And that takes imagination. That takes you to be able to set aside and for a moment not try to figure out why this weird cutout space is in a neighborhood, right? I mean, if you thought hard enough, you probably could figure it out, right? I'm sure it has to do with laws and zoning and bleh, right? But allow yourself to be guided by your imagination. Allow yourself to tap in to that energy, to let your imagination go and draw from that energy and connect us to it. I almost feel like sometimes as we conquer and claim dominion over this earth, we've forgotten she, because I do feel like earth is a woman, she was created to provide both sustenance, food, things to house us by, but also a divine nourishment, a divine way to just literally with our feet, literally right under our nose, to connect and draw energy from life to life. Jesus so often drew on nature in his parables. My favorite parables have always been the growth parables, right? The parables of the sower with the seeds, or the mustard tree, or although this isn't a growth parable, but I think about what we heard today. He uses nature to get us to look, to draw from a metaphor that is literally right under our nose. And so in the message today, or in the Testament reading today, he said, look to the lilies of the field. Look to the birds of the air. Look. Sometimes we use this passage to think about how we need to be more faithful. But I was wondering as I'm creating the sermon was he just trying to get us to look, to find meaning in something other than the mundane of the life, of everyday life? Take a moment, look at the lilies, the gentle way they sway in the breeze, rooted to the ground, lifting up to the sky. Look at the beauty of their colors, how one fades into the next, blending, creating something new in between. Look to the sky and see the birds gliding. Feel their joy as they ride a current of air. Do this and know that you are part of this wondrous creation. Stop your busyness for a moment. Just stop and stand and look and know that you are a beloved child of God. Yes, for whatever reason, this world, this life, this realm that we exist in is tough. We are surrounded by broken people. We ourselves are broken. And we are asked to help be a part of fixing it. It's tough work. And so Jesus asks us to just stop and look. And in that stop and looking, take refuge for just a moment. As the psalmist reminded us, take refuge and be refreshed by divine love. And wait, to close us out, I'm going to bring in a prayer. This is from Celtic Prayers. I got this when I was in that trip to Edinburgh. And the title of the prayer is just God. I am the wind that breathes upon the sea. I am the wave on the ocean. I am the murmur of leaves rustling. I am the rays of the sun. I am the beam of the moon and stars. I am the power of trees growing. I am the bud breaking into blossom. I am the movement of the salmon swimming. I am the courage of the wild boar fighting. I am the speed of the stag running. I am the strength of the ox pulling the plow. I am the size of the mighty oak tree. and I am the thoughts of all people who praise my beauty and grace.